All right, we love Dr. K. How's it going?
Good morning. I was say, what is this? Morning, afternoon? Yeah, good morning. It's nice and
I don't.
sunny in North Carolina. Well, where I am in North Carolina, so that's always a win-win.
Okay, you got some sunshine over there. I love it. I'm on location today. As you can see, my background is a different color. I'm actually visiting. Well, I came to do some client meetings, but also got the opportunity to spend some time with my little parents, my parentals, uh, my parental units. um, this weekend. So I'm super excited to be here to spend time with them. So I'm actually in my mother's office. So
Woo.
that's kind of interesting doing our live today. So I
How
feel
does that
like a big
feel?
girl pretending today.
How does that feel? Why do you feel pretending?
I don't know. There's some like I'm like, oh, okay. Like like how is it? I don't know. And that may be a piece of rest. I feel like that's gonna take us somewhere. But I feel like I'm sitting in her chair and sitting in her. It's just got me like thinking about I guess legacy a little bit and whether or not I fit. Like this is not my space, even though I feel welcome in it. But like whether or not it fits. So I feel like rest can feel like that sometimes as
Yeah.
well.
Like if you fit in the her being in the space, or
Yeah, kind of like there's it just feels like there's a responsibility here. Does that make sense? Like that
Mm,
I need to have a reverence for this space. And I do because it's my mother's space, if that makes sense. But also like, they're big shoes to fill. And so like even in that kind of like moving some of her things so that I could create space felt kind of tiptoey, right? Right? And different, but also kind of like the the success of creating the space. Like here I am doing something that's incredibly important to me in this space and feeling like, okay, like
yeah. But here's the thing. She gave you permission to be in her office, though, right? Are you there? You froze. Can you hear me? All right, let's see where she went. Technology. Oh, well, maybe she'll come back. Let's see here. Well, to all those that are watching, put in the chat, regardless of whether you're watching on Facebook. I think we're on streaming on live on YouTube as well, where you're coming in from as we await Dr. Wilson to come back into the room, where you're tuning in from. This is the good and the indifferent about technology. So we'll give her some time to come back in. So we're gonna go on a quick little break real.
Dr. K.
I told him we went on a quick little break until we can get you back in. I didn't know what
I got
happened.
took I got raptured up out of here. I have no idea what happened. My whole computer just turned off. It was like, nope, you've done enough at this point. it said go rest. And I was like, no, wait a second.
I was
I'm in
like,
the middle
you
of
because you right, you was talking mid, and I was just like, then you froze.
I am
all was
like
well.
crying laughing. I was just like, are you serious right now? Oh my gosh, technology is fantastic until it's not.
That
So let's see. So we've got some folks here with us. If you saw me get raptured up out of here, let me know in the comments what you thought had happened to me. But I was talking about I think being in my mom's office, right? And how that is special, but yet like finding space to kind of like step into my own. And I feel like rest can feel that way when you think generationally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of folks haven't had the opportunity to see the folks that brought them up rest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or even to have a positive relationship with what rest looks like. And so it can feel like you are obviously as we grow. One of the hardest things I have been talking to people about recently, because I don't see a lot of people talk about it, is really like you get to a stage where you have to raise you begin raising your parents. People keep asking me, are y'all gonna have kids? I'm like, I have parents to raise. Like, it really does start to feel like you switch, spaces in that, but also just like not having. I grew up, and for folks who have read the book, and if you have not, get our book, Strategic Rest and Leadership. I talk about how my parents did model rest, but one of the most interesting pieces to me is that a lot of people didn't have that. Did you have did your parents model rest for you? I guess that would be a good question to ask.
No. At least not my definition of rest. But before I get to that, one of the things I was asking before you took a break was you was talking about, being in your mother's office, having to create space, her office being kind of her legacy, etc. And my question was, but she gave you permission to be in the space, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, especially when it comes to our parents or folks we look up to, etc., that when we get into what they have created, we automatically feel like I don't belong here, or I have to maneuver just to fit in, when in reality, they created a space and they have the ability to allow who they want in and out. And so if someone has allowed you into their space, allowed you into their legacy, it's not about you creating space, because the space has already been given to you.
Ooh.
And oftentimes, going back to this idea of rest, we feel like we can't rest in someone else's space, mainly because the question is, did they give us permission to be in the space? Sometimes we're taking up space that we haven't been given permission to be in. We just want to be in it.
And that's not conducive to the kind of rest that we're trying to have, right? Exactly. Absolutely. So I mean, like, even in that, oh man, that hit me so hard, because also when someone is creating a legacy for you, right, then there kind of is no doubt that you are invited into it. So as we create communities with people, and then for ourselves start to also create spaces where people can rest, it should be less about permission to join and whether or not it is the right space for you. Is that where you will be able to fully embrace rest, right? Like, was this a space where I could fully kind of immerse myself in what I had going on? So, oh my goodness. Yeah.
Which leads me back to the question of, did I grow up in a space where my parents modeled rest? And my answer was a quick no. Because, growing up, I always felt like I had to maneuver or had to be someone that I wasn't to fit in. Right. I was a very high I was big on storytelling and reading stories and books. And, back in the day, you had all the encyclopedias and, wanted to be a teacher and those things. But, folks around me wasn't always, adapted to that. And that's okay. But it felt a little lonely, and I was actually reflecting on that this weekend of though, come from a family, not just my immediate family, but, it's a lot of us. But there were moments where I just felt lonely. Like, do I belong here? Am I supposed to be here? Because I just feel out of place for whatever reason. And I started watching. So Sweet Magnolias is my show, and it just came back on for season 4.
Where is it streaming? You Netflix. Said Sweet Magnolias?
Netflix. And so I just finished up the last season in like 2 days, and I'm just sitting here like, this is beautiful. It's based in a small town, and it's these 3 women that grew up together, experienced life, and then they all ended up back in the same hometown, and they have what they call margarita night. So whenever, someone needs to talk or just to get away, they come to somebody's house and just have margaritas and just talk about life in general and just learn from one another. And I was like, I remember having that type of space in college and how restful it was. And being almost 40 now, reflecting on, I wish I could have maintained that type of level of friendship with those folks, despite the different spaces that we've gone, which led me back to what we talked about in our book, this idea of collective strategic rest, right? Collective rest. And how oftentimes we think that when people move out of their hometowns, or you finish with college and people get married, have kids, and do all these things, that you don't belong in their space because you don't do the things that they're doing, right? So a community that once felt like rest to you is now like, I don't think that's rest anymore because they're all married and gallivanting or whatever, and I'm not doing that.
Gallivanting,
right? You knew every time you was in their space, it felt like rest. Yeah. Right. And so you limit yourself from the opportunity of saying, hey, I know you married and got kids and got all this, but when we hung out, it always felt good. I always felt joyful. Could we do that again? Yeah. I know we're in different spaces with what that looks like, and a lot of people are afraid to do that. And that came to mind because more often than not, what I get from people is, oh, well, you're busy, so I didn't even ask you because, I know you're busy. And I'm like, aren't we all busy? And how are you defining busy? And
right.
And then I think about the perception that people have on me in my life based on how peaceful I operate in it, how I show, all the things that I'm doing, etc. And they take that as I'm too busy to be a part of whatever they have going on, regardless of whether they see it small or big. And it has put me in a space of loneliness. And so my theme this year is permission granted, but alongside of that is, how do I be intentional about being social with folks without being too, in their face about it, right? Because I only want to be where people want me to be, but also giving them the authority to invite me into that space. I'm not going anywhere that I'm not invited. And I know that I've done my due diligence in inviting people into different spaces that I occupy, and I'm just waiting for people to do that for me. And if they don't, I've gotten to the space of, now I have a collective group that does. Yeah. And so 10, 11 years that I've been in North Carolina, right? I have a best friend who I met when I came to North Carolina. She now no longer lives in Greensboro, but in the last couple of months, I found a community of 3 other women that we do just that, right? We just collectively come together, have some drinks, have little snacks, etc., and just talk about life in general, and how that has been a source of rest for me. and during the midst of our book coming out, and the way they have embodied this idea of strategic rest with me, it's like they're on this journey too. And so that has been probably one of the most rewarding spaces I've been in the last couple of months, that reminded me of this idea of sweet magnolias and the power of community.
Yes. So I want to go to the comments real quick. So Kessa or Kisa, if I say it wrong, please forgive me. But she said, so what was it?
It's Kisa.
Kisa. Okay, let me make sure to heavy on the E. Okay. Kisa said, especially when you're the one that's single with no kids. And I get that. I totally understand how people do that. And then she also commented, I want to show her second comment. She said, like, still invite me. Okay. She said, don't be assuming I'm busy. We talked about this, I feel like last episode or episode ago. Oh my gosh, we've been in this, but we talked exactly that. Like, stop making assumptions for people's schedules, especially when you're relationship building, right? People make time for the things that are important to them. People do the things that are important to them, right? And the stuff that they want to do. That's it, period. I tell people all the time, people do what they want to do. And so if you want to hear more about our thoughts on people want to do what they want to do and kind of create what the experiences that they have, I want to encourage you to go back to our live show. I think last week, I can't remember, but go back and look at all the lives, okay? But whatever the case is, yes, that's absolutely important. And one of the things that just brings me a whole bunch of joy, especially recently, is people speaking about strategic rest, about them actually doing strategic rest in conversations with me, and kind of forgetting that that they got it from the book that they read, I wrote, and that makes me so happy being in spaces. So I am on a board. It's called Leadership Fort Worth, and I'm on their board. And so in the work that they do with creating leaders in the community, people who are this idea around community trusteeship, if that makes sense, in the work that they do. And so in it, they have been talking about how not just being not how you're not just a leader, but you also need to rest. And so them reading and kind of having discussions with that group around and using strategic rest and leadership as a guide for that just blew my mind that is what like people are doing. So to be a part of these conversations is just everything, but to also kind of bring it to the forefront and create space, because whether we realize it or not, that didn't just hit me until just now while we were sitting here together. We literally, kind of the same way my mom created this office, we have created a legacy of space and rest for people that they can choose to join. That there's not an invitation. You pick up the book and you have decided, like, we created that space for you to do that. And I hope everyone chooses to join the space that we created for you around rest. Oh my goodness. That is heavy to me.
Yeah, I think the other thing that shows up for me, and I don't know if this is a Black family thing, or it may not even be a Black thing, just maybe in general. But when you watch TV shows, or you have people that you're connected to that grew up differently than you, and the conversations that they would have at the dinner table or wherever they are, and I sit and I think, and y'all didn't talk about folks, and they're like, what do you no? And I think for me is, I don't know, this idea of gossip it's very unrestful. And I think I'm in a space now where if that's who you are, don't invite me, because there's no growth in that, right? And I think I've been in many spaces where the conversation has been more gossipy rather than a space of just being and just talking about life, right? And that interferes with
Okay.
the idea of rest,
Okay.
right?
So I see what you're saying. You're saying that there's a difference between conversations and spaces that allow you to kind of just, go with the flow and talk about what's happening with you that may require you to tell information about specific people for people to have what's the word I'm looking for people to have understanding of what's happening, but that's completely different than spending your entire time gossiping or bashing other people as a part of your time together. I get
Yeah,
it.
and I think and I've dealt with that my entire life, and I think it's
Mm,
because I'm a peacemaker, right?
mm,
I live a life where, okay, if someone is doing something that I don't like or et cetera, and I have the authority, the space to say, hey, have you tried this, et cetera, I'm gonna do that. If not, then I pray and keep moving, right? But I don't dwell on it.
mm.
And it
Yeah.
came up because I was listening to, so I haven't bought the book yet, Let Them Theory, but everybody's talking about it.
I
By
told
Mel
you my pastor preached a
Robbins.
really great
Yeah.
series about it.
And
And
so
so it's hot.
I started following the author, Mel Robbins, and I was watching something that she was on, and she said that we're looking at jealousy all wrong.
Mm.
And she said the jealousy is blocked desire.
Whew.
And she talked about you don't get jealous of people that have things that you don't want.
And
You get
don't.
you get jealous of people who have things you want, and the rooted question is, why don't I have it? What haven't
Mm.
I done? What actions haven't I taken? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
flipping how we look at jealousy. And so when I think about present day, the older you get a little wiser, I hope, is the conversations we're having. If you're jealous of someone, it's okay. Because now we can really talk about, well, what keeps you from getting that if that's what you want?
Yes.
And for
Yes.
me, that's a sense of growth, influence, and rest, which leads me to that's probably why most people don't want to hang out with me. Because I'm in a space of growing, whatever that looks like personally or professionally, right?
Yeah.
Everything for me is legacy building, right?
Yeah.
It's not, I don't need to be in the limelight in the front. I mean, it happens, but that's not the purpose in it for me. For me, it's about
Yeah.
growing you as a person. Like, how do I continue to grow as long as God gives me breath in this body? Do I continue to grow in a way that's influential not only to me but folks around me, or
Yeah.
am I going to always stick in this space of there's always something negative? There's nothing positive. And if I see something wrong or indifferent to what I believe, that I address it rather than just dwelling in it, right? And
Absolutely.
for me, I've become, since writing this book, more conscious. I think I stated this in the earlier space of being around people who to keep me rested and not unrested.
Mm.
And so when I think about, your mother's office, that's a space of rest because she's created it. And if I created a space, I'm only allowing people I know that are going to reverence the space already in it.
Absolutely. And will have respect for it, right? And that will also, like, when I return to it, if I return to it, it's still a space I recognize,
Yeah.
right? It's still a space that um I don't know, that still welcomes me back in, right? Because oftentimes we do that as well. Like, someone invites us into a space and then we take it over, right?
Right.
Even when they haven't invited us to do so. I am one of those people that, like, if you if you invite me somewhere, right? I'm like always conscious of, like, did I leave it better than when I came, right? So for us, we live I love where we live. I struggle when it comes to, like, thinking about getting a home because I love being, like, up high, if that makes sense, and, like, having not necessarily being in a house. And I know some people love being in a house. One of the things that I wish I had a house for was to host people, because I'm a hostess with the mostest. Like I love to do that. So oftentimes when we're gonna host people for a big group or whatever the case is, we rent like an Airbnb or whatever the case is, so that we've got a lot of space in order to do it. But then I don't have to like clean up or do anything crazy to my house. I can just it's a rest thing because I get to just go back to my space without having people in it, right? Which to me allows me to rest. Whatever the case is, when I do that, one of the things that I always get as a comment back from the person who's rented it to us in the Airbnb is you left our house better than you got it. And so to me, as someone who prides myself on being a maximizer, right? Someone who like really takes something that someone gives me and then moves it to the next level. Like, are you not just coming to a space where people are, but are you also like looking for spaces and places to maximize what people are giving you as you're on your journey is to me incredibly important.
Yeah, because going back to the show Sweet Magnolias, one of the and I'm gonna paraphrase it, they were talking about, having a group of them coming together as a group of women to talk about anything, the good, the bad, the indifferent, to vent about each other sometimes and still leave empowered and still in a space of, okay, I can accept what I did or what you don't agree with, and we can have, a little pity party, but we're doing it right here in a space of rest. And when we leave after drinking these margaritas, we haven't forgot about it because it's growing us. And I begin to see the growth in not only myself, but someone else that I've had that type of conversation with. And I think oftentimes, we look at conflict and opposition so differently. We, being certified core strengths facilitators, that conflict and opposition are so different and people get it all wrong. What most people are experiencing is opposition, which prevents them from being, moving into a space of rest. But they, regardless of whether they're experiencing opposition, they see it as conflict, which keeps them from resting in the space of opposition. And opposition is that we agree to disagree.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only thing that changes the game is if it's personal, right? Like the difference between opposition and conflict is literally that conflict means it got personal, right? Either you took it personally or the person in action actually made it personal. The difference between saying, oh, hey, it's going to rain outside. Are you sure you want to wear those shoes? Or you never know how to dress when we're going out and it's raining. Why, are you going to wear those shoes? Those two things are saying the same thing, but one was just opposition, opposing the idea of doing it. And one was literally attacking the person about how they dress. And so, like we have to understand when it comes to conflict and when it comes to opposition, that opposition is incredibly important, right? It's where innovation comes from. It's where we're able to see new ideas and to grow and to respect that other people have different thoughts from us and for us to create from that space. But literally, conflict is when we make it personal about someone versus just the ideas and concepts.
And I think about that reference in a space where you're rested with other people. But when you're so focused on conflict and making everything, the 4 agreements, you take everything personal, regardless of who you're around, you'll never feel rested. And I feel for those folks. Because they may never experience what rest is.
My hope is that everyone gets to experience what rest is. And that's the whole reason we wrote a book about it, right? Like, so if you are someone who's not getting the opportunity to experience rest yet, and how it helps you to be more innovative, how it helps you to be creative, how it literally helps you to fill your cup so that you have enough to pour out, then I invite you today to make sure that you get our book, Strategic Rest in Leadership. So I cannot believe it, but again, it flies by every time we do this. It's already time for us to tell y'all we'll see you next week. So before we go, last week we told you the Strategic Rest Summit is on and popping, and we expect to see y'all in the place. We have already sold tickets, and we have a limited amount, and so they are going incredibly fast. For those of you who are unsure where to get your tickets because you need it, because we are creating a space and a community around rest and you need to be there. Dr. K, do you want to tell them a little more about where to do it while I type in the comments the address?
Oh yeah. So if you go to the strategicrest.com, everything that you want to know about the summit is there, including our book and how you can get a copy of the book. We have two experiences, so to speak. So we have the Essential Experience right now that is $349 until March the 15th. And then we have the VIP experience, which is $499 through May 15th. And so again, limited seats, tickets, because we want to make sure that it's an intimate space to have this conversation, these practices, strategies, etc., that we're going to have. It's going to be fun. It's going to be different than other types of summits, conferences that you've had. We really crafted it to be like we're at somebody's house just having a good time, but with purpose, if that makes sense. And it's going to be in Greensboro, North Carolina. So maybe not the location that you may think of as rest, but that's the idea, right? Is that often places that we don't think is rest is very restful. It just depends on who's in the space with you. So again, the strategicrest.com to learn more information, get registered, and let us know when you register.
Please let us know when you register. So next week, because you are going to register, okay? I believe in you. Next week when you come back, I want to hear in the comments, folks, let us know I'm registered and ready to go. We need to get a little badge for people that have already registered, something that they can put on social media. We're going to work on that this week so that y'all have some stuff to be able to be like, hey, join us. But you all, as always, it is an absolute pleasure for us to share this space with you. I hope this week is full of strategic rest for you and opportunities for you to do that. And then also that you make good decisions. We will see you back here in the same place on YouTube Live. We also stream it on Facebook as well as LinkedIn for right now. Soon we'll be migrating over to just straight up YouTube. So make sure to like and subscribe the Power Nap Live over on YouTube. All right, we'll see y'all next week, 10 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock Eastern. See y'all then. Bye.
Bye.